I told him I forgave him on a Tuesday afternoon in our kitchen. The light was coming through the window at that particular angle that makes everything look softer than it is. He was standing by the sink, and I was sitting at the table, and the words came out clean and simple. I forgive you. He cried. Relief and gratitude poured out of him like he'd been holding his breath for months. He came to me, knelt beside my chair, put his head in my lap like a child seeking absolution. Thank you, he kept saying. Thank you. I'll never hurt you again. I promise. And I stroked his hair, and said all the right things. That we would move forward. That we would rebuild. That what was broken could be repaired. But even as I said it, even as I played the role of the merciful wife, I knew something had fundamentally changed. Forgiveness, I was learning, is not the same as forgetting. And I would never, ever forget. His name is Michael. We'd been married for 6 years when it happened. The affair. Such a small word for something that detonated my entire life. 6 months with a woman from his office. 6 months of lies, of late meetings that weren't meetings, of business trips that had nothing to do with business. I found out the way these things are always discovered. A text message that popped up on his phone while he was in the shower. Nothing explicit, just familiar. Too familiar. The kind of casual intimacy that only comes from repetition. Asterisk, missing you already. Last night was perfect. Asterisk. Last night. When he told me he was working late on a presentation. I didn't confront him immediately. I'm not that kind of person. Instead, I did what I always do when threatened. I gathered information. I went through his phone while he slept. I checked credit card statements. I tracked his location. And I discovered a shadow life I'd been completely blind to. Hotel rooms. Dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. Gifts purchased that never made it home to me. A whole relationship, carefully compartmentalized, hidden in plain sight. When I finally confronted him, 2 weeks after that first text, I had assembled a complete picture. Dates. Times. Receipts. I presented it to him like evidence in a trial. And he crumbled immediately. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. It meant nothing. She meant nothing. I was weak and stupid, and I will regret this for the rest of my life. How long? I asked, my voice unnaturally calm. 6 months. But it's over. I ended it. I swear to you it's over. Why? I don't know. I don't have a good reason. I was feeling lost. Disconnected. And she paid attention to me in a way that felt. Don't, I interrupted. Don't you dare try to explain this as something I failed to provide. That's not what I meant. Get out. He left that night. Stayed with a friend. For 3 days, I had the house to myself, and I used that time to make a decision. I could leave him. I could blow up our life, divide our assets, tell everyone what he'd done, start over alone. Or I could stay. I could forgive him, as everyone would expect me to. As I'd been raised to do. I could be the bigger person, the one who chose love over pride. But there was a third option. One that occurred to me slowly, like a photograph developing in a dark room. I could forgive him. And I could make sure he never felt safe again. When he came back, I told him I wanted to try. That I believed people could change. That our marriage was worth saving. He was so grateful, so eager to prove himself, that he agreed to every condition I set. Complete transparency. Access to all his accounts, his phone, his location at all times. Couples therapy. Individual therapy for him. No contact with anyone from his office unless I approved it. And he had to quit his job and find new employment. He agreed to everything. Whatever you need, he said. Whatever it takes. What I needed, though I didn't tell him this, was control. What I needed was to make sure that every moment of every day, he remembered what he'd done. That forgiveness didn't mean the slate was wiped clean. It meant I was choosing to let him live with the permanent stain of his betrayal. The first few months he was a model of repentance. He went to therapy. He got a new job. He came home every night by 6. He checked in constantly. Where he was, what he was doing, who he was with. He handed me his phone without being asked. He never complained about my surveillance. And I watched. I watched everything. I checked his emails every morning. I reviewed his text messages every night. I looked at his browser history, his GPS data, his credit card statements. I knew where he was at every moment of every day. "You're keeping tabs on me," he said once, trying to make it sound playful. "Yes," I said simply. "I am. Don't you trust me?" I looked at him with the expression I'd perfected, not quite cold, but not warm either. Neutral. Evaluating. "You broke my trust. Now you have to earn it back. This is what that looks like." He nodded, accepting this. What choice did he have? But it wasn't just the surveillance. It was the reminders. Small ones, woven into everyday conversation. We'd be watching a movie and a character would cheat, and I'd say, "That reminds me of when you were sleeping with Amanda." Casual. Factual. Not accusatory, just remembering out loud. Or we'd be at a restaurant and I'd mention, "This is nice. Much better than that place you took her to. What was it called again?" Or we'd be intimate, and afterward I'd ask, "Was it different with her? I'm just curious." He'd flinch each time. Try to change the subject. Try to move past it. But I wouldn't let him. Because this was the deal. Even if he didn't fully understand it yet. Forgiveness with conditions. Mercy with a price. His friends started to notice. At a dinner party, one of them made a joke about Michael being on a tight leash, and everyone laughed uncomfortably. Michael tried to laugh too, but I could see the humiliation in his eyes. Later in the car he said, "That was embarrassing." What was? The leash comment. You agreeing with it? I didn't agree with it. I just didn't disagree. Is that inaccurate? Are you not accountable to me now? I am, but what? You want forgiveness without accountability. You want me to pretend it never happened. No, he stopped frustrated. I don't know what you want from me. I want you to remember, I said quietly. Every single day. I want you to wake up remembering what you did. And I want you to go to sleep grateful that I let you stay. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "How long is this going to last?" I don't know. How long does it take to rebuild trust that was destroyed over 6 months of lying? He didn't have an answer. The thing about surveillance is that it changes you. At first, I told myself I was just being vigilant, protective, making sure he wasn't falling back into old patterns. But somewhere along the way, the watching became its own addiction. I found myself checking his location multiple times an hour. Even when I knew exactly where he was, I'd read through his text messages looking for what? Evidence of another affair? Or just the satisfaction of seeing him living a transparent life, everything exposed, nothing hidden? Our therapist noticed. In one of our sessions, she asked me directly, "What would it take for you to feel safe enough to stop monitoring him?" I thought about it. I don't know if I ever will. Michael looked at me surprised. Ever? You lied to me for 6 months. 6 months of looking me in the eye and telling me you loved me while you were fucking someone else. How am I supposed to know when you're telling the truth now? Because I've been completely transparent for 8 months. I've done everything you asked. I've never missed a check-in. I've never given you a reason to doubt me. You hadn't given me a reason to doubt you before either. And you were lying the whole time. The therapist intervened. That's a fair point. But it's also true that you can't build a future relationship while constantly punishing him for past behavior. I'm not punishing him, I said. I'm protecting myself. Are those different things? She asked gently. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure they were. But I couldn't stop. The monitoring had become a ritual. A way of maintaining control in a world that had proven itself uncontrollable. As long as I knew where Michael was, what he was doing, who he was talking to, I felt safe. The moment I loosened my grip, I felt the old panic return. Michael started pulling away. Not in obvious ways. He still came home on time, still checked in, still handed over his phone. But there was a distance growing between us. A resignation in his eyes. Like he'd accepted that this was his life now, and he was just going through the motions. We stopped being intimate. Not consciously. There was no conversation about it. It just stopped happening. The physical closeness required a vulnerability neither of us could access anymore. I was too guarded, and he was too resentful. One night, About 10 months after the affair ended, I found him sitting in the dark in our living room. "Why are you awake?" I asked. "Couldn't sleep." I sat down across from him. In the darkness, I could barely see his face. "What's wrong?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What's wrong? We're living in a prison, Rachel. A very polite, very civil prison, but a prison nonetheless. That's not fair. Isn't it? You track my every move. You bring up the affair constantly. You punish me in 1,000 small ways and call it healing. I made a terrible mistake, and I have apologized and repented and done everything you asked. But it's never enough. It will never be enough. Because you destroyed something that can't be repaired," I said, and my voice was shaking now. "You broke me, and now you're frustrated that the broken version of me isn't convenient for you." "I'm not frustrated that you're hurt. I'm frustrated that you won't let yourself heal. You're holding on to the pain because it gives you power over me." The accusation hit harder than I expected. "That's not true. Isn't it? Be honest. Do you even want to trust me again? Or do you prefer this, me constantly in debt, constantly trying to earn back something you've already decided I can never have?" I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. But sitting there in the dark, I realized he might be right. Somewhere along the way, my vigilance had stopped being about protection and started being about punishment. And I had convinced myself that punishment was the same thing as justice. "I don't know how to let it go," I admitted quietly. "Then maybe we need to end this. Because this isn't a marriage. It's a penance. And I can't live like this anymore." The words hung between us. For the first time since the affair, I felt genuinely afraid. Not of him cheating again, but of him leaving. Of choosing his own freedom over my control. "Don't," I said. "Please." "Then something has to change. You have to decide if you actually want to forgive me, or if you just want to keep me trapped in this moment forever." "I did forgive you. I said I forgave you. You said the words. But you never meant them. Forgiveness means letting go. And you've never let go for a single second." He went to bed. I stayed in the living room, his words echoing in my mind. And I forced myself to ask a question I'd been avoiding. What was I actually doing? Was I healing our marriage, or was I just making sure he suffered the way I had suffered? The answer terrified me. I stopped checking his phone the next day. It was harder than I expected. My hand reached for it automatically several times, muscle memory demanding its ritual. Each time, I forced myself to stop, to sit with the discomfort of not knowing. Michael noticed immediately. That evening, he left his phone on the kitchen counter and went to take a shower. When he came back, it was exactly where he'd left it. He looked at me surprised. "You didn't check it?" "No." "Why not? I'm trying something different." He sat down beside me. "What changed?" "I don't know if anything has. But I'm tired. Of watching. Of waiting for you to slip up. Of defining our entire relationship by the worst thing you ever did." He took my hand carefully, like he was afraid I might pull away. "I know I can't undo what I did. But I can promise you that every day since, I've tried to be someone worthy of your forgiveness." "I believe you. But that's not the same as trusting you." "I know. But maybe it's a start." The next few weeks were strange. Without the constant surveillance, I felt unmoored. Anxious. My mind filled in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. When he was 15 minutes late coming home, I immediately imagined he was with someone else. When his phone buzzed and he didn't immediately show me who it was, I assumed he was hiding something. But I forced myself to sit with the uncertainty. To not immediately demand proof of his innocence. It was excruciating. Our therapist called it building tolerance for ambiguity. I called it torture. "The truth is," she explained, "you can never have complete certainty in a relationship. Even before the affair, you didn't actually know what Michael was doing every moment of every day. You just trusted him. What you're trying to do now is recreate certainty through control. But that's not trust, it's management." "So what? I'm just supposed to blindly trust him again." "Not blindly. But you have to accept that trust always involves risk. And right now, you're trying to eliminate all risk, which makes genuine connection impossible." I hated that she was right. One evening, about 3 weeks into my experiment in loosening control, Michael came home with flowers. Not expensive ones, just a simple bouquet from the grocery store. He looked nervous as he handed them to me. "What are these for?" "Nothing. I saw them and thought of you." I took them, touched despite myself. "Thank you." "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure." "Do you still love me? Not the me you're trying to punish, but me, the actual person standing here." The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on managing his behavior, on maintaining control, that I'd stopped thinking about love as something separate from surveillance. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think I do. But I've buried it under so much anger and fear that I can't access it anymore." He nodded, accepting this. "That's fair. But I need you to know something. I can't keep living in purgatory. I've done everything you asked. I've been patient and transparent and remorseful. But at some point, you have to decide if you want a marriage or a prisoner. Because I can't be both." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we have 3 months. 3 months to figure out if this can actually be repaired. If at the end of that time, you still can't trust me, still can't let go of what happened, then we should end this. Cleanly. Not out of anger, but out of acceptance that some things can't be fixed." My first instinct was to argue, to say he didn't get to set ultimatums after what he'd done. But looking at his face, I realized he wasn't being cruel. He was being honest. And maybe I owed him the same honesty. "Okay," I said. 3 months. Those 3 months were the hardest of my life. I had to actively choose every day to not monitor him, to not bring up the affair, to try to see him as he was now, not as the person who had betrayed me. Some days were better than others. There were moments when I felt glimpses of what we'd had before. Easy conversation, shared laughter, physical affection that wasn't weighed down by resentment. But there were also days when the old rage surfaced, and I wanted to remind him of what he'd done, to make him feel small the way he'd made me feel. On those days, I'd force myself to go for a walk, to call a friend, to do anything other than weaponize his past against his present. About 2 months in, we went to dinner at a restaurant we used to love. Over wine, Michael said something that surprised me. "I miss you. I'm right here." "No, I miss the version of you that existed before I destroyed everything. The one who laughed easily, who trusted without constantly analyzing, who didn't look at me like I was a bomb that might explode at any moment. That version of me is gone," I said. "You killed her." He flinched. "I know. And I'm sorry. But what I'm asking is, can we build something new? Not what we had before, but something different. Something that includes the fact that I hurt you, but isn't entirely defined by it." I thought about this. I don't know if I know how to do that. Neither do I. But I want to try. If you do. And that was the moment I realized something. I had been so focused on making him pay for what he'd done that I'd forgotten to ask myself what I actually wanted. Did I want revenge? Or did I want a marriage? I couldn't have both. The 3-month deadline came on a Saturday. We'd planned nothing special, just another ordinary weekend. But when I woke up that morning, I felt different. Lighter somehow. Like a weight I'd been carrying had finally begun to shift. Michael was already awake, making coffee in the kitchen. I watched him from the doorway for a moment, before he noticed me. He looked older than he had a year ago. More tired. The affair and its aftermath had aged both of us in ways that went beyond physical appearance. "Hey," he said softly when he saw me. "Coffee? Please." We sat at the table, the same table where I told him I forgave him a year ago. The light was different now. Winter sun instead of summer, but the space held the same weight. "So," he said, 3 months. "Yeah. Have you made a decision?" I wrapped my hands around my mug, gathering my thoughts. "I have. But first, I need to tell you something." He waited, his face carefully neutral. "You were right," I said. "About everything. I said I forgave you, but I didn't. Not really. I wanted you to hurt the way I hurt. I wanted you to live in constant uncertainty, the way you'd made me live. I called it protection, but it was revenge. And I'm sorry." He looked surprised. "You're sorry? For keeping you in purgatory? For using your guilt as a weapon? You did something terrible. But I made sure you could never move past it. That wasn't healing. That was torture. I deserved. Maybe you did. For a while. But at some point, it stopped being about what you deserved and started being about what I could control. And that wasn't fair. He was quiet for a moment. Then, so what now? Now I actually forgive you. For real this time. Not the performative version where I pretend everything's fine, while secretly keeping score. But genuine forgiveness. Which means accepting that you're human, and humans sometimes do terrible things, and that doesn't have to define you forever. Tears were running down his face. Thank you. But, I continued, I need you to understand something. Forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was. I'm different now. We're different. And I don't know if we can build something lasting from these ruins. I know. I'm not asking for the old marriage back. I'm asking for a chance to build a new one. That's what I want too. But on different terms. I won't monitor you anymore. I won't bring up the affair in every argument. I won't use your past as leverage. But in exchange, you have to accept that my trust isn't something you earn back. It's something I choose to give you, every day, knowing I might get hurt again. That's terrifying. For both of us. But that's what real trust is. Not certainty. Just the willingness to be vulnerable despite uncertainty. We sat in silence, both of us crying now. Not the desperate tears of the early days, but something quieter, sadder. The grief of people who'd lost something irreplaceable, but were choosing to build something new anyway. I want to try, Michael said finally. If you do. Ido. But we need different help. Our therapist focused on repair. I think we need someone who can help us rebuild. From scratch. Okay. We'll find someone new. And I need you to be patient with me. Some days I'll be okay. Some days I'll panic. Some days I'll want to check your phone and demand to know where you've been. On those days, I need you to understand it's not about you. It's about me trying to live without the illusion of control. I can do that. And Michael? I looked at him directly. If you ever lie to me again about anything, we're done. No second chances. No negociations. I'm choosing to trust you now, but that choice comes with a hard boundary. Honesty or nothing. Honesty, he said firmly. Always. We spent the rest of that day together, not doing anything special. We went for a walk. Made dinner. Watched a movie. But it felt different. Like we were relearning how to be in the same space without the weight of punishment and penance hanging between us. That night, lying in bed, Michael reached for my hand. Can I tell you something? Of course. I'm not glad I had the affair. I'll regret it forever. But I am glad we're here now. This version of us. It's more honest than what we had before. Maybe that's worth something. I thought about this. Maybe. But I would have preferred to learn honesty without the trauma. Me too. We lay in comfortable silence. And for the first time in a year, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness. That would take longer. But the absence of constant vigilance. The ability to exist in the present without weaponizing the past. It wasn't forgiveness as I'd imagined it would be, clean and absolute, wiping the slate empty. It was messier than that. More complicated. Forgiveness that coexisted with grief. Trust that lived alongside caution. Love that had learned to survive without certainty. It's been 2 years since that Saturday morning conversation. 2 years of slowly, painfully rebuilding something that looks nothing like what we had before. Some days are still hard. I'll see a woman who looks like Amanda, and I'll feel the old rage surface. Or Michael will be late coming home without texting. And for 5 minutes, I'll convince myself he's lying again. But those moments come less frequently now. And when they do, I've learned to recognize them as echoes of old pain rather than predictions of new betrayal. We found a new therapist, one who specializes in post-infidelity reconstruction rather than repair. She helped us understand that we weren't trying to fix our marriage. We were building a completely new one with the same 2 people. You can't go back to innocence, she told us in one session. But you can move forward into something more resilient. Something that's survived being broken. Michael kept his promises. Complete honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. He told me when he felt attracted to someone, when he felt disconnected from me, when he was struggling with the weight of his guilt. The transparency was painful at first. I didn't want to hear about his attractions or his doubts, but over time, I came to appreciate it. Honesty, I learned, isn't always comfortable, but it's trustworthy in a way performance never is. And I kept my promises too. I stopped monitoring him, stopped bringing up the affair as a weapon, stopped defining him exclusively by the worst thing he'd ever done. It was harder than I expected, giving up that control. But each time I chose trust over surveillance, I felt a little more like myself again. Not the naive version who'd never been hurt, but a stronger version. Someone who could love without needing guarantees. We still have the conversation sometimes. About what forgiveness means. About whether I've truly forgiven him, or just learned to live with what happened. I think forgiveness is a practice, not a destination. I told him recently. It's something I choose every day. Some days I choose it easily. Some days I have to force myself. But it's always a choice. Do you regret staying? He asked. I thought about it carefully. No. But I also don't know if I'd make the same choice if it happened again. The first time, I had no idea what betrayal at that level would cost me. Now I know. And I'm not sure I could survive it twice. You won't have to, he said. I promise you that. Don't make promises about the future, I said gently. Just be honest with me today. That's all I need. Last month, we went back to that restaurant where I'd first discovered his affair. The one where I'd found the text message on his phone. It had taken me 2 years to be willing to go back there. But when we walked in, I felt nothing. No rage. No pain. Just the neutral observation that we'd been here before, when we were different people living a different life. Are you okay? Michael asked as we sat down. Yeah, I think I actually am. We ordered wine. Talked about ordinary things, work, friends, a vacation we were planning. And I realized that this was what healing looked like. Not dramatic transformation or perfect resolution. Just the ability to be present without constantly referencing the past. On the drive home, Michael said something that surprised me. You know what I think about sometimes? That version of you that couldn't let it go. The one who monitored everything and brought up the affair constantly. What about her? I understand her now. At the time, I thought you were being cruel. But now I realize you were just trying to survive. You were doing the only thing you could think of to feel safe again. I was cruel sometimes, I admitted. I told myself it was self-protection, but there were moments when I wanted you to hurt. I know. And I don't blame you for that. I'd probably have done worse in your position. We pulled into our driveway. Before we got out, I turned to him. Can I tell you something? Always. I'm glad I stayed. Not because everything is perfect now. It's not. But because I learned something I needed to learn. That I'm strong enough to survive the worst thing I could imagine. That I can choose trust even when I'm terrified. That love isn't about never being hurt. It's about deciding someone is worth the risk of being hurt again. He took my hand. Thank you. For choosing that. For choosing me. Thank you for becoming someone worth choosing. We sit on our back porch now sometimes, the way we used to before everything happened. But the silence between us is different. It's not the comfortable silence of people who assume they'll never hurt each other. It's the harder silence of people who know they might, and who've committed to honesty anyway. I forgave him. Not the way I thought forgiveness worked. As an eraser that wipes away the past. But as a daily practice of choosing forward motion over backward staring. Of defining him by his present actions rather than his past failures. Of building trust not through surveillance, but through the radical vulnerability of simply believing him when he speaks. Do you forget? No. The memory is still there. But it's lost its power to control me. It's just part of our story now. The chapter where everything fell apart, followed by the longer, harder chapter where we put it back together into something different. Something more honest. Something that knows what it's survived. I forgave him. And this time I actually meant it.